in working subsequently for the last, however many decades of people in this kind of experience. Like, and I asked that with the context of, being January 2021 at this point. We've lived as a planet through something that is a wake-up call of sorts, I think. And it's very painful. And for many people, it's been very tragic. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation was that, there's so much intense pain happening for any number of reasons right now. And that people, the knowledge and wisdom you have is something that the world really, I think, needs to hear. And so with that kind of context in mind, given that we've had this collective hitting of a wall, how do you in a way make sense of that, or how do you think about that given your own experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's such an extraordinary time, isn't it? Well, I suppose the main thing that I've learned in my own life since climbing up the ladder out of hell a bit more is that the wisdom is, how do we respond to what happens, not what happens. We can't control what happens. Life throws curveballs, life throws us things. We can create conditions that will, maybe make it less likely for disaster to happen, but nonetheless, sometimes bad things happen. And the wisdom is, how do you respond to that? And of course, we can have a huge amount of agency in that. We don't need to feel passive or victims in the face of that. And that's what I've really seen over the last year is we have a global pandemic going on. We can't stop that. We can't do anything about that. I mean, obviously, behaviorally, we can abide by the rules and try to avoid spreading it and all those sorts of things. So there are things we can do, but nonetheless, collectively, we now have this virus circulating in the population of the world. And as I understand it, it's probably not going to go away. There'll be the vaccines and so on that will manage it, but it's going to be endemic now. And either we can rail against these things, or we can think, well, this is really, really hard. Moment by moment by moment by moment, how can I meet this with presence and with choice? Because the behavioral outcome of mindfulness is choice. The behavioral outcome of mindfulness is what's going on mentally, emotionally, and physically. So you face it. You don't do what I did 40 years ago of just pretend it's not happening, which is what I did in my denial phase, which I managed to keep up for 10 years. It's like, this is happening, everybody. So moment by moment by moment, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling upset or fearful. Okay, what's a wise response to fear? I'm going to breathe. I'm going to drop my breathing deep in my body. I'm going to allow my out breath to go all the way out. I'm going to notice my thoughts. I'm going to stand in my courage. I'm going to drop my awareness into my feet, and I'm going to feel my body, and I'm going to feel my courage, and I'm going to move into the next moment with my head held high. Yeah. And that's the way we can begin to navigate these territories. But because there's huge confidence that comes with knowing that the wisdom is about your response. Because if you think that that wisdom arises if you get life on your own terms, you're always going to be disappointed. Or if you think, well, I can be happy if there's no pandemic, that's not going to work, because guess what? There is a pandemic. But if it's like wisdom arises when I can acknowledge, yes, this is happening on this planet right now, and I'm going to be real and honest about my emotional response, but I'm not going to get swept away by it. So it's this middle way between suppression, pretending it's not happening, or getting swept away. We just breathe, we rest, we stand in presence, and we move into the next moment, and we just take it one moment at a time. We're in the UK now. We've just gone into lockdown again. And it's all a bit mysterious, because we've obviously got the vaccine rollout happening. So on the one hand, the government's saying, hey, guess what? It's all going to be better by middle of February. On the other hand, they're saying the lockdown might go on till April. So we don't really know. Now one could really catastrophize about the lockdown and think, oh my God, I can't bear it. Not again. Not again. It's the middle of winter. It's much, much harder. Or you can think, actually, going right back to my experience in hospital, 3 months away, even the concept of 3 months, that's entirely a mental fabrication. 3 months. What does that mean? It's just 3 months of moments. And yet I can live this moment and I can live the next one. And then eventually 3 months will have passed and something else will have landed in our lap. So I think that's the teaching I would rest upon, is putting all your effort into responding, creating wise response to what happens, rather than thinking you can control what happens, because that's what the pandemic is teaching us. There's so little we can control, really.